Good morning to you all. I'm Sid Mukherjee, CEO, founder of SPI, a technology provider for retailers worldwide. And it's wonderful to be here as a first-time sponsor of this event. I think Joan Sweeney, Jana Hawley, Kimmer Brooks, of course, Terry and your team, I mean, they have done a fantastic job, and I think we are definitely going to come back next year. Since I just can't put a bag down and you will recognize my company, like the last person that introduced SAP, let me tell you a couple of lines about SPI. So SPI is a provider of custom software development, infrastructure services, and products in the area of merchandise planning, demand forecasting, demand signal analytics, and vendor management software. And we provide this to more than 200 of the greatest retailers in the world, including, I'm very proud to say, Macy's. But it's a great privilege to introduce the next speaker, Clay Cowen, who is the Chief Marketing Officer of Gilt. Clay has had many, many years of experience in leading global digital businesses and e-commerce at various organizations. Before Gilt Group, he was with Starwood Hotels and Resorts, and prior to that, Vice President of E-commerce and Digital Marketing at Sports Authority. Clay also has a lot of affinity to Boston in his younger years, holding a bachelor's degree as well as an MBA from Harvard. And Gilt is a very fascinating organization, and I'm sure a company that has more than 6 million signed up members for an online-only discount retailer. I, for one, am very interested to hear how such an organization markets itself. So please join me in welcoming Clay Cowen.
Thank you so much. What a humbling honor to be here, and now that my digital and geek cred has fully been established, yeah, I'm a nerd. I was also on the math team in high school, so if that helps. Any ladies out there that are single, they love that. Played football too. So I genuinely am very humbled to be here. It's very humbling for me personally, and just to speak to you guys about what little I can share. But also humbling for Gilt, who, if we think about the future of retail, probably 2 or 3 years ago, we would have been one of these slides, and maybe even a sub-bullet on one of the slides about Flash and sort of a new model that was coming on the landscape. And so today we come to you, I make up all of my analogies on the fly, so just bear with me. They're all couture. Sometimes they work. But just, we are a little boat in a big ocean, and you guys are steamliners of retail. And so the waves that we see feel gigantic to us, and maybe they become something that you guys need to think about. But I thought maybe today I'd share a couple of things that we watch as potentially disruptive on our landscape, and perhaps over time they become something bigger than Gilt, and maybe even on your landscape. So we see a couple of things, and these again are we all see the world through the lens of where we operate. So ours is generally in luxury retail and very fashion and apparel focused, but these things are also global trends. We see the global luxury market growing. These are some friends of ours in Bain. If you see your chart, I apologize for stealing it. But the global luxury market is now over $300 billion, and that's a big number. But what really catches our eye is that the biggest market is China, and it's the fastest growing market. So when you're the fastest and the biggest, that's a trend you have to keep your eyes on. So it's a piece that we really think a lot about. How do you play in a market like China? And I know that all of you in the room are very aware of China is a graveyard of bones littered with US companies that tried to go it alone. And there are some who have succeeded, there are many who have not. And so we look at that market with great humility, and how do we think about playing in a luxury retail market there that has such unique dynamics with the government, with fraud, or so with counterfeit goods, and how do you measure authenticity, and the way you message value, which is very important to our message. How do you think about playing there? We don't have all the answers, but I think it's a trend that's worth us all thinking about. For a guy who's a digital guy to get up and not say that there's a big shift in online would be a miss. But this story isn't about all of the growth being in online. We know that most of the growth is on online. This slide is about the headroom. So if you look at online, it's 6.3% of total sales globally. That's not a very big number. And so when we think about the opportunity for the online business, it is massive, and it's growing at 18% CAGR right now, but in the US, that's slowing a bit, but there's no reason that shouldn't be faster than globally. And we see it in triple digits in different markets. And so we talk about online and when's that story gonna play out, but when I look at this chart and I see that 2 years ago it was 95% offline, and next year it'll be 94% offline. My takeaway as a chart reader is there's still a lot of ways to go. This is a little bit for us, and I think you guys know this in the room, but foot traffic is falling. And if you look at just total, I don't know what the metric here is, that footsteps, 34 billion footsteps. But if you look at the total visits to the stores, like just declining. And so we see the tragic headlines in retail stores, and we're overstored and over-mauled. But to me, it's really fascinating that 40% of the brands that we all sell in our stores, they did not sell online. And so there is a lot of headroom, not just in the online channels, but getting brands just to get online. And in luxury, off-price luxury is trying to find outlets. And it's a very tricky marketplace for us because as we think about, once a brand goes off-price online, that price lives out there forever. And it's very hard to hide it. And so you see great competitors like TJ Maxx that really take advantage of this, but it also shows there's still opportunity in online for offline luxury. And the final thing is, and I'll talk more about this because this is kind of our sweet spot, what you see here are 4 big segments: Gen Y, Gen X, and older. We'll just leave it at that. It's tough for me to say that. But if you look at it, Gen X is already spending money on luxury, which is what we care about. Gen Y is not, but they will. And so when you think about the particular quirks that group has, it is really important for our business. Because every time they sneeze, we catch pneumonia. Because and I'll talk a bit about in our business why it's so important, but maybe with you guys, it's something to think about. We know the metrics, they're far more likely to shop online, but I want to share a few things specifically about them. So, I loved writing that headline. So they love online, but they also love mobile. As a beacon of hope, I was really surprised to see. So online ranks as Gen Y's #2 preferred way to shop. So what's number 1? Right? I know I saw Ralph Lauren, but an example is the mono brand stores are their favorite place to shop. Going offline to a Ralph Lauren store or Rebecca Minkoff store, which you'll hear more about later, that is their favorite place to be. The experience, the authenticity of the brand comes alive, the storytelling, and when you think about the merchandise authority that store has, they can bring it to life. But then if you look at online is #2. But if you think about those other 3 segments we talk about, online wasn't even the top 3. And so the #2 way to shop for the new generation coming up, we have to think very thoughtfully about what the presence is. And then I'll just hit mobile, which is when we do our research, the concept of being offline, they don't really understand it. Like, what are you talking about? But they really genuinely do not understand the concept when we say, when are you offline? They're not. And then the mobile device, it is not rude to check it not only at dinner, but in bed, right next to someone, right? So it's always there. The second thing is they're very, very price conscious. And so when you come out of college and you come out of business school in a recession, like, you get scrappy. And so lots of shopping, and they know how to game the system. So they know they know when Barney's goes off price. They know how to think about the coupon stacking. But they research, and then they buy, and they're very, very savvy. And they're hard to make money on because they're doing that. It's very hard to play that game with them. And the final thing is they're very into sharing. And sharing is a simple word, but it really signals a different concept of just very unconventional retail, unconventional transactions of e-commerce. So Airbnb, Zipcar, Etsy, UberX, like this concept of I have a service, I have an asset, I can sell it. I can rent my apartment because I stay with my boyfriend 4 nights in a row. Why can't I rent out my apartment 2 days in a row? Right? Just this concept of there's just this fluidity in what is a commerce and a social transaction with them that we haven't seen. I know on our team, if I think about the people that work in our company, they tend to skew into this group. I can't think of a single one of them that doesn't have some sort of side gig, right? They all have this, I came out of college and I started doing a travel blog, right? Or I built my own brand, I designed handbags, and I'm too small for Gilt, but I have a little thing in Brooklyn with a boutique, right? Or they DJ. I know it sounds silly, but it's so true in terms of how they're wired, and totally comfortable with that sort of, this is where I get my paycheck, but don't tell me I can't moonlight. That's different. This is how I work. But it's also how they shop and how they own. And so the concept of owning something permanently and it being yours and in your closet and taking up space in your Brooklyn apartment is a little bit foreign. This idea of, well, I have it for now. You may borrow it or you may rent it, or maybe I'll borrow or rent or buy your used one. It's a real trend that we see, and I'll talk specifically about that with some examples of some startups and then venture capital that's flowing into this space. So I told you that we were hyper-exposed at Gilt to things like this. We have, again, a very young clientele that's also very affluent. And so if you just eyeball the chart, you can see our users that are 25 to 35, these are our members, they're 50% more likely to be in that group than a department store. And we're actually nearly twice as likely as online retail in general. So we tend to skew very young. But we also tend to skew pretty affluent. So our visitors tend to be wealthier because we sell luxury brands than most department stores on average, and also online retail on average. And so we feel these people that are willing to come in and out with their money very fluidly, it affects our business. It's very up and down. And so we'll have a great week and we'll have a not great week. It's tough to predict. They're making an interesting ride. So I think the real question for us all, and Gilt particularly, but I think everyone in the room as you think about your businesses moving forward, is how do you continually excite this group? Famously flighty, right? I mean, just so much noise in the landscape. So you mean really continually excite them, right? Just saying you're going to do something and having a campaign run for a month or 2 months or resetting the store every quarter or every season just does not work with these guys. And so it's the interesting thing to us is it's not just the retailers that are setting this bar. There's other startups we're going to talk about it, but it's not just in retail. This is where all of the startups that are in the space are aiming. And so companies that are massive today, Instagram and others, they're all targeting this audience. So the bar is raised and constantly with this group. They're very hard to succeed with. So with that, I'll give a few thoughts, things that we think about in terms of really focusing on what matters with them. Luckily, it's old themes where we know as retailers what has always worked will continue to work, but we have to think about it in a little bit new way with this group in particular. So I'm not saying this is for everyone, but for Gen Y, this is what we see. Retail has always been a social activity. It's always been about showing off with your friends. What did you try on in the store? How does it look? I go to the boutique with my friends and shop. Now we see huge trends in our business and in others of I pinned it, I posted it, I liked it, I followed it, I blogged it, I shared it. And then you see companies whose business models are built around that. You see companies like Wanalo and others that are basically, the whole premise is I'm going to be a online sharing site to connect your social network, but also add a commerce element, something that a Tupperware party of the past, right now for this scrappy younger generation is something that we keep an eye on. So, the final shopping as a weekend entertainment, right? That's just I know you all know, that's not the way it is now. And so we say it's an evening hour or even a noon hour when we launch our business. But it's also mobile shopping and games and moments. And so the entertainment is not just going to the store, it's walking around your city. Can I make some sort of shopping adventure while I do it, with mobile being a part of it? There's always been a thrill of finding the sale rack. I'm a sucker for it. But now the hunt is more digitally focused, and deals are more transparent than ever. Now, I'm going to go deeper here, but that's That's a real problem in our space as a deal site. The transparency on deals has only increased since we entered this space, but the complexity of what's a real deal, the total value in the product, and was it exciting, that's a place where we think we all need to play well. Discovering something new. This is very exciting to be in front of a group like you guys, and in digital we would have said the infinite aisle. You know, it's coming, it's coming. Well, the infinite aisle, I think we all know, is here. And so that leads to a real problem, which is, how do I tell you what to look at when you have a million things to look at? And so we spend a lot of time talking about digital curation and storytelling, and we frankly do a lot of it manually. I'll show some of the ways that we do it, but there's an element of, I cannot be bothered to wade through all of these things. You have to tell me what to look at, but you better know who I am and tell me right, or it's not, or you're going to be dead to me. The other thing is swapping clothes with friends. Like I mentioned this, you know, we've always, if you have a younger brother like I do, or you know, sisters always steal clothes. But now there are business models that are built around it, and I'll go into a few of these, but are just like, how can I monetize my closet? There are companies out there that are specifically solving that problem. And then finding what's right for me with sales associates. This is, you know, you guys are all so good at this, and I just think about Nordstrom's and guys who are truly amazing at service. But now it's personalization, intense, implicit, and explicit personalization. And so what a personal shopper in a store would tell you, now they're looking to the digital channel to say, no, personalize for me. And so Netflix and Amazon are fantastic at this, and they always have been. But they do what I call is implicit personalization. I watch your behavior, and then I change your experience based off that behavior. We do a little bit of that. I'll show you. But this is in our research, this is the number one thing that comes up is I want explicit personalization. I don't want a manual recommendation. I want an explicit, personalized recommendation showing this is what matters to you, and this is why we think it. We think because you looked at this brand, or we think because you bought this one, that this is something that you will value. And then you do things like thumbs up and thumbs down, and sort of you makes your engine better. But they want that to be explicit, not just implicit anymore. And then there's a softer side of this that's a little more fun as a marketer, right? That's not fun. That's from my IT group. But you look at Stitch Fix and companies that are like, I go through an engine, you pick different items. What did you like? What's your style? And then they'll send a basket out to you based off of those items. I see some of the women nodding. And so then they ask you to share it with your friends. Which one did you like? Which one did you not like? And which one do they like? And so as the recommendation engine picks the items, sends it to you, and then you have your friends validate the curation and the personalization. You just see a stack of these things coming together, and with this group, they really resonate when people unlock it. It would be trite not to say something about social, but the thing that I find really interesting here is obviously social is a place for authenticity and line blurring. But if you look across this thing, this is one of our shots in our warehouse, and then up top you see a shot from one of our sales, but you see Nike and sharing, but you also see at the bottom Refinery 29, right, which is a media company. And so there's not much difference between those three shots and the types of things that they're doing. And so if you think about the blurring of the lines between brands and retailers and commerce and friends and social, it's really interesting. And so that's a nut that we're trying to crack of like, what's the right tone of voice for a social post? Do you want us to be a brand? Do you want us to be a retailer? Do you want us to be a friend? Or do you want us to be a recommender? So that's the thing that we think of, and how do we think about cracking social for this Gen Y group? I talked a lot about this, but you know, why buy when you can rent or you can share? So Rent the Runway is massive. I know you all know them. And they're growing, and they're doing things offline that are very, very interesting. And so the concept of renting a high-end dress and returning it and renting 3 of them, check the size, go into a store, that's an interesting problem if you're specialized in selling high-end dresses. The Real is high-end consignment. I know many may know them, but just how can I shop the closet of someone that has a Louis Vuitton purse, and I take beautiful pictures of it, and I make sure that you get a real luxury item, but it's a consigned good. They don't have to take the inventory. And then you see other startups that are luxury high-end. You see Vestiaire Collective here, and I'm going to keep running on vintage because I think it's a really interesting space. If I were to pause on any single slide that was sort of where was Gilt 3 years ago, and, oh, here we are today talking, this is the page where I think there's just really something to it. So you see in vintage, you see Yugi's Closet, tradies, ideas around monetizing your closet, such as Poshmark, which just raised a bunch of money very publicly last week, Bib and Tuck. But how can I get in and sell the things that I have in my closet? And the way these companies work is, tell me about the brands you like, connect me to your Facebook network, and then someone like you who you can trust has those items in their closet. Right? That's a new model that is a problem if you're a retailer. And then there's a dozen others. I won't go into them, but I do think that it's not just our space. I look at auto. I'm a car guy. I'm a big nerd. There's a company called BP, which I don't know if you've seen it, if you've bought a used car lately, but if you haven't bought from BP, right, you should look at it. So it's this idea of, we know this car is over here. We know that you're over here. And that traditionally there's been a traditional dealer network between the two of those things that has taken an unfair rent on that exchange. And so just this concept of a new way to go to market by taking an asset that someone else has and sharing it with someone directly without a retailer in the middle, as a retailer, it's something we think a lot about. Mobile shopping, I think we all talked about mobile first 2 years ago, and like that's where we want to be. The concept of companies that are really mobile only and just starting in mobile web is an afterthought, whether it's Glam Hive or PS or Spring or Wish, there's a dozen others. This concept of mobile only shopping, and when you're connecting with your friends and the bar is lower on trust, right, where I trust the items because they're my friends' items, or I can see the beautiful pictures, or you're standing next to it in someone else's store, right, and that's mobile only shopping is a thing where we think a lot about at Gilt. Now, I've talked about a lot of companies. I'll pause here for a second. Not all of these guys are going to be here the next time that we talk, whether it's in a year or in 2 years. Not all of them are going to win. But just a single number, $1 billion in VC cash last year went to fashion retail startups. $1 billion from VCs to fashion retail. And so they're placing bets in this space. A few of them are going to win, and they're going to be big. And so if I think about those trends, it's something that we'll keep an eye on, particularly on mobile and on this idea of sharing and renting. All right. I didn't tell you guys this, but this is really a story of 2 presentations. Boring charts and exciting pictures. So we're nearly through the boring charts section. So Gilt, if you were to talk about Gilt a few years ago, we would have said discount retailer, absolutely. We were a flash site that sold luxury brands online. We still are. But I want to show you something that we find, that's on our radar. If you think about looks available online across 13 non-flash websites. So these are not flash websites. These are looks from non-flash websites, people that are in the room, of really, really nice brands. So Kate Spade, Vince, Free People, Stuart Weitzman. You'll see that this is in a single snapshot in time. Right? So Mark by Marc Jacobs had 3,500 looks available online. Kate Spade, 1,700. Free People, 1,400. So that's a big shift from the 40% that aren't online, these luxury brands that are not online. Now these guys are really online. However, the number that I think is really eye-opening is you look at the percentage that are discounted. So the ones that are in red are over 50% of the looks that were available are on discount of some form. So 1,400 looks from Free People, 70% have a discount of some form or fashion. And so if we're trying to play the game, we play head up against the value game. Like, we're here for discounts. So, wow, you can go get those discounts in some form or fashion a lot of ways. But if I'm in a full price game, and that's a really hard conversation to have when 70% of the looks I can see online are discounted in some form or fashion. All right, so enough of the bad news. So for us, in a changing landscape where discounts alone aren't as exciting as they used to be, how do you stand out? And it's not just the discounts, it's all of this other noise. You guys may not feel it, but for us, we feel all of these other startup noises, the Springs and the Wishes and the things that, the eBay launches out in the marketplace. Like these little bitty things like we hear about and we feel it because our Gen Y girl goes and checks it out. right? But it may not be enough for you to feel it in the big landscape. The way that we think about playing in this is we really focus on telling a great story. And this is the thing where value alone used to win. We have this great brand at a great price. Now we have to romance much more. But at the core, we are still a value retailer. And so we don't have great margins. We're e-commerce alone with terrible margins in the first place. And then we're value, and I'm trying to tell a great story on top of it. And so we have a team that I'm so proud of that's in Brooklyn that does a photo studio that is just incredible. But man, do they work cheap and they work fast because we're daily flash sales. So everything that I showed today, I can promise you the maximum time that it took from shoot to on the site was 4 days. That could have been the maximum. Usually it's 3 or less. So just for whatever it's worth, everything I'm talking about is high velocity. So for our brands as a discount retailer, we have to sell them on being on Gilt. Right? We're very fortunate over time to have had some success here. But one of the ways that we are able to do it is we promise them that that you will be beautiful, right? And so Trina Turk is a brand that we love. And when we storyboard out what this is going to look at, they want to be shot on a beach, and we can promise them a 9-foot studio in Brooklyn with terrible lighting. Right? But this is what it looks like when we shoot it. Right? So in that terrible lighting, in that 9-foot ceilings in Brooklyn, like the team brings it to life and just really sells it. I want to show another example. A great picture is worth 1,000 words. We take a lot of not so great pictures, and we have some good conversations about that. But a great picture is worth 1,000 words. And so I'll show these. These are Fry boots, which I just think look incredible here. And the little story I have on this one is we shot these very rapidly. And then our team last week was at Fry, who, again, are a great brand, and I love their boots personally. Went in to meet with I don't know if this story is true because I wasn't there, but they told me this. There's no press in the room. I hope. So they went into the CMO of Fry's office, and they only had one bit of creative hanging up on the wall, and it was these photos that we had shot of their boots. And that's really the bar that we aim for as a fashion and a luxury retailer, of like celebrate the product in a way that the brand would really want us to celebrate it, but also in a way that will connect with the customer. Because we have two customers. It's the person who's buying and then the person we're buying from. And both of them have got to be really happy when you're in the flash discount business. And so back to the Trina Turk, it's not just pictures. When we got this sale, you can see the photography is beautiful, but we actually got quotes from Trina herself to describe the things that matter to her, and then being able to highlight them on the site. And so these are Trina's pics. This is a functionality that we didn't have, but we had to build for this sale. And it was just getting that live and just this endorsement and this idea of curation and storytelling and getting it forward really brings it to life. Now, both of these stories are great. Trina Turk looks beautiful. Fry looks beautiful. But both of them did 200+% greater than we expected them to once we gave them the love, right? When you give them the storytelling love, we had it forecasted a certain number, and then they did 200 and 400% better than we thought they were going to. And what happened for us in the retail reality in our model is that opened up more inventory because we only get what we can buy. And so then all of a sudden, Trina Turk opens up and Fry opens up inventory for a follow-on conversation of, do you want to sell in through your channel? So it's a story of connecting with Gen Y, but it's also a story about how do you make it great for your brands. We also have a complicated environment where we have to guide the storytelling, but we leave room for discovery. And so to my eye, this looks a little cluttered. There's a lot going on. But to the Gen Y, every time we test it, the more we can get in front of them, the more they love it. And so the ability to pull through and to create your own adventure as you go along, very important, right? So, I love Trina Turk. I'm going to click through, and I have 3 options to do that, but I still have the ability to quickly curate my own selection if I want to. This is in direct opposition to what they tell us in research. But you look at it in data, and they do enjoy actually a more cluttered experience as opposed to a cleaner one. These stories can also help us. So we are an email-driven business, and as you all know, email's not doing great. And so email is a declining vehicle, and so we really have to work hard to make email stand out. And so we can go machine generated and do a sale email every day at noon. I hope you all get them. But we also have these franchises on Thursday nights that tell more of a story. And so best week ever, right? That's so girlfriendy and but just letting you know, we have 7 great brands. It's the best week ever on Gilt. And the response rate we see when we're able to do this is much higher. Now, the problem is it's hard to do this at scale. Can I do this every single day and with a personalized set of brands? We can't. We can't at our scale. But we can bring it to life once a week. You see also, this is just a little bit of a story about me as a CMO. But the new jewels, which is a trend, and I wear things like this when I get dressed up. It looks much worse in the office. And I walked in and our head of editorial was explaining to me what the new jewel trends were. And she was like, ear cuffs and jackets, of course. And I was like, I think those are just 2 words that you put together that don't mean anything, like ear and cuff or ear and jacket. And yet when we got it in front of our girl, she knew what it was, but we also helped her and explained, no, ear cuffs and ear jackets. These are the 3 trends in jewelry for the spring. And so unlocking these little niche categories where guys like me don't get it, but our girl got it and was very successful. And again, when we give it the love, it tends to work. The other thing that storytelling lets us do is it lets her participate. And in this group of Gen Y, it's really important that she's able to shape it. And so we ran a simple little $1,000 gift credit so you guys know how expensive or inexpensive that was, right? So it wasn't that much money. But we ran a contest on Polyvore where people can curate your own sale. What would your own curation of Gilt look like? And so this is user-generated content. This was the winner. Right? And so great, we get this great image and this great sale, and we ran this sale, and it was successful. But it also tripled our social media engagement over that week as people were engaging and trying to figure out who's going to win the Polyvore contest. And we went from having 500 sets on Polyvore to having tens of thousands of sets on Polyvore instantly by encouraging her to share the story. A little quirk about me, or a little bit quirk about Gilt, rather, is that stories can also share your DNA. Gilt struggles a bit with its identity sometimes of, are we a fashion brand? Are we a retail brand? Are we a tech company? Because frankly, our tech team is so strong, and we're so humbled to work with them, but they drive a lot of innovation for us. And so sometimes we're able to bring a little bit of that forward. So we're so data-driven as a company, but we have girls in our office that can spot the height of a heel from 30 paces without missing. And so our tech team was curious what the average heel height by state was. We'd never asked that question, but our tech guys did. And then we created an infographic with a heat map, of course, showing from low to high who has the lowest and the highest heels. And so the flats of Kansas and the high heels of Puerto Rico, you can see the spread. It's kind of interesting though, right? And so as we think about franchises tell stories, these are the kind of things that we think about. And to us, it feels uniquely Gilt because we're so tech and data and fashion. But everybody has their own version of this. But for us, this is our DNA. We also use our stories to blur the line between press and retail. I showed a little bit between social and retail and commerce and community and retail. But for example, we had a big Kleinfeld sale, or was it an event, or was it a PR story? We sold $10,000 wedding dresses on our site. We didn't sell a ton of them. Couldn't try it on, and the return, people were worried about returns on wedding dresses. Multiple reasons. But what we did is we did swamp Kleinfeld's store in New York. People were so excited to meet the TV celebrities from the TV show. But we also swamped our site. I don't know if you can see it, but we had a $19 wedding dress buried in our site. And so it was a story, it was a sale, or it was an event. And so this is the thing we think a lot about as we talk about what we're going to do next. I talked about personalization a second ago, but I just wanted to show you what it looks like for us. So this is the site experience that you would see after just browsing a little bit differently on the same day, right? If you go to 2 different sessions and you just browse differently, you don't have to buy differently, but you just browse. And if you put a couple things in your cart, we change it up. But Gilt has been doing this implicit personalization for 18 to 24 months, like we've had a pretty good personalization engine running. The thing that we need to do more of is we need to be explicit about it, about why we recommended this brand for you. And so this is what people are asking us to do. So as a woman shops and as a man shops, or even if you know, they would tend to get different brands. And as you engage in the home category, your home page might be actually more furniture than you would expect. Or you get kids stuff, even though you may not have kids, but you're buying gifts for your friends. So you get a really different experience. And I would just encourage you, if you're kind enough to shop Gilt, maybe play around a little bit, and you'll see some of that in action. You all know this, but we also have the ability to do good sometimes with the stories we tell. But the line between commerce and doing good is always a little blurry as well. So I just wanted to show an example of we don't have money to pay celebrities to be on our site. We just don't. However, celebrities often have great causes that they want to promote. And so Jennifer Meyer, who's a fantastic jewelry designer that I just learned about, and Jessica Alba did a collaboration for Project Red for a necklace. And so we got the exclusive. We're very excited about that. But also, she wanted to go on Ellen to talk about it. Happy to have her do that. And so we were able to do a little good, but our traffic that day was multiples higher, 400% higher in terms of daily new members, just off of that sale. And again, we can't attribute it to our sale, did they come from Ellen or not? But we're happy to have 400% new members on a day. And the other things about stories is sometimes they let you put a little spin on it, a little lipstick on the pig. I'm from Texas, so that's what we would say. And so a story, I don't know if you guys have Toomey bags. I love Toomey bags. What color are your Toomey bags? Black, right? Yeah. So what happens if you get a load of blue and red ones? Did I say red? I meant Marsala. The color of the year. It's not just for pumps. And I would also say blue is as classic as blue jeans, and it stands out in the airport. And so our guy particularly doesn't want to take a risk on something like this, but he did. And so our sales were 3 times what we expected for this sale too. What can I do to put an angle on it? And then the final one, and I'll just, as a male CMO, I'll tell you this is tough. Sometimes you have to take a risk. I didn't choose this one, but here we are. So I don't know if you know who Kim Kardashian is, but 30 million of followers of hers on Instagram do. And so we ran last week, we ran a Kim Kardashian, this is again, Gilt's pace is pretty crazy. We ran a Kim Kardashian sale where we had an exclusive for her book. And so it's not our typical sale. We sold out in 1 minute. So it felt a little far. We were questioning it the whole time, but we sold out in 1 minute. And so just for what it's worth, I think it's, sometimes you have to take a little edgy risk, and I'll just get that photo off as quick as I can. And then the last slide is I just wanted to show a bit about, this has been a lot about online. But the offline world is, when we talk to our Gen Y customer, they really want something that blurs the line between it. And you see, I talked about Rent the Runway, Warby Parker, lots of online players are moving offline. And so we have to figure out for us what that looks like. And so this is truthfully the first time this has been showed outside of our boardroom. 3 weeks ago, we ran a pilot in our Gilt headquarters where we did something called The Vault, which was a personal closet where we would talk to you on the phone. We have stylists in our Brooklyn studio that know how to make someone look fantastic. And we talk to our customer on the phone, what would they like? And they would say things, I wish you would fill my closet for me, right? So great. And then we would like a personalized sale for you. And so in our headquarters, we set up, this is a conference room. It is a third the size of the stage, maybe half the size of the stage, not very big. And so we ran customers through there. The appointments sold out in 6 hours. So it was a tight pilot, but still we sold out our appointments in 6 hours of our very best customers. It had an 85% conversion rate when customers came in. I mean, it's a high commitment to come into a corporate office and buy something, and you feel a little guilt. Nice, right? But we also had a 93%, I want to come back and do this again. Can you come back and have me again? And we saw average order values of our customers spend a lot, our best customers, they spend many thousands of dollars a year. People spent many thousands of dollars in an hour. And so this curated shopping experience is something that we are going to continue to push. And so we're going to roll this out for the rest of the year just in our corporate headquarters to continue to pilot it. But if I think about trends in retail, this is one where, as an online-only player, we have to think a lot about offline experiences too. So how can we bring things to life? So with that, I'll stop. I feel like the trends that are very trite, online and mobile and social, everyone knows them. I would say that keep your eyes out on the sharing trend, and how do you think about this new scrappy girl that's shopping in different ways and thinking about ownership in a different model. That's something that we think a lot about. And then to say content is really important in sharing and getting these emotions probably undersells it. But I hope you saw a little bit about how Gilt does it across all of our channels and tries to bring it to life a bit. So thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. So close. Plane leaves in 10 minutes, no pressure. Are there any questions? Sorry, I missed the others. Please ask some. Thank you. Yeah. So the question is, what the 85% return rate, 85% conversion rate, what are the returns like on the conversion? They've actually been very low. So we ran this test about a month ago, and I can't share the specifics, but we ran it for a couple-week period about a month ago, and we've been watching the returns very carefully, but they've been much lower than our average returns. Now, you would expect that because our normal model is we ship it to you sight unseen. These women had a chance to try it on. Yeah. Yeah, there's another question.
Clay, you said something intriguing about
which part?
About human, yeah, all of it.
Kidding.
About human-provided personalization. That there were some folks in your organization that actually were engaged in sort of guiding that. Can you be a little more explicit about how that's happening? I mean, do you actually have teams of people who are watching best customers and trying to design experience for them?
Yeah, so we think about that in a couple of different ways. So the question, I think, is, how do you do human-guided personalization? I think really at scale is probably at the core of the question, right? And so we have a customer base that's tagged by persona. Like, we understand exactly what persona every single customer is. And so that gives us a great starting point of brands they're most likely to like. And so if we want to do something like target an email to a persona and then make a personalized recommendation, it'll feel pretty good, right, to that persona, pretty honed in. We don't go to the individual 6 million members with a, well, John, what do you want? We don't do that at scale. What else? Anything? Well, thank you again so much for the time and the questions.